Hey there, I'm Lydia Walker from rusticsongbird.com, and today I'm talking to singer-songwriter Josh North, and we're going to be talking about how to pitch your songs to movies, TV, and commercials through sync licensing. And we're going to talk about how to get started with sync licensing for musicians. So, Josh, thanks for joining me today for this conversation. I'm so excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a great topic that I've searched up and down just to find information on this. And it's not, I don't know so much how it is now, but it was not accessible when I first started like 3 years ago. Yeah, I'm happy to share what I know and hopefully help some people out.
Well, I'm excited to just share the opportunity with other musicians to talk about the possibilities to get your music into movies, into TV shows, into commercials, and to make money upfront and ongoing with your music. Yeah. Even for someone who's just getting started, who doesn't have an audience, who doesn't have a fan base, who isn't touring, this is an amazing, lucrative way for musicians to make money from their art and to get paid for their creativity. And I just love that so much. And this seems like kind of a vague area of music for people. It's like, how do you get your songs in movies? How does that even work? And so I'd like to talk about the basics today and just share from your experience and my experience over the past, yours over the past couple of years. And then really for me over the last 8 months, I've gotten serious into pitching for sync licensing and just learning so much about it. And the first thing that I'll say about that is that it's different than the structure of the music industry. So if there are musicians or songwriters used to working in the music industry, writing songs for radio or writing songs for an artist, like to pitch to an artist, it's a different way of writing and a different way of creating than writing music for TV. And we're really working as musicians in the TV industry, and it's a totally different playing field. And so I'm really excited to share the opportunity that there is so much possibility for musicians at every stage of the game. I'd love to hear from your experience. What was like that light bulb moment of finding out that sync licensing was a good opportunity for you?
Yeah. So about 3 years ago, I don't know what, like, I've always ever since I was like in early 20s, I always thought it'd be so cool. I had this passion of I love music mixed with visuals. And I thought it'd be so cool. Like, I know how effective it is. You can even take a song that's not even that powerful, but then mix it with like a visual and it like pops. And I thought it'd be so cool to be a part of that. And I remember just thinking well, okay, how do you even get involved? Because it is so vague. And it's like, well, let me look at some podcasts. Let me see what comes up. And I found a couple people who were very transparent with their experience. And I remember listening to a full podcast of just a woman's experience. And I thought, whoa, okay. So here's the basics of just to get started, get the first, your foot in front of the other and just get in the door. And I remember walking and talking to my wife, like, hey babe, this is something I think I want to do with my music. I think I want to take it in this direction for a while. And I think the biggest thing too, is that it felt okay to make it all just about money. Like a lot of artists oh, it's not about the money. It's like, well, for me, this kind of was about the money, because I thought, okay, well, I can take songs, and write specifically for what this thing needs. And it is about the money. And it's that, cash up front and then the royalties that come through. And I thought, well, this is really a great way as a musician to make money. And so I just started researching. The research began, and I spent hours and hours and hours of figuring out how to do this. And I did it in a way that I didn't have to spend money to, I didn't have to sign up for a course. So it was a whole bunch of just digging deep to find free information through podcasts or YouTube videos or articles and stuff. And I kind of just accumulated all this information and then just did what it said. So for example, when you're writing music, a great way to start is Taxi. Everybody, it all points back to Taxi. Hey, if you want to just kind of figure out the flow of this thing and get used to writing, join Taxi. And so that's what I did. I started, okay, I'll join Taxi. And the cool thing about Taxi is that you can write a song and you can submit it for a specific project. So you can like see it all laid out for you. It's like, hey, this company's looking for this and the song needs to be about this. Please don't add this. So it's pretty cut and dry. And you can write a song based on that. And if you pitch the song, and even if you don't get it forwarded, which is what means they are going to forward it to the music supervisor, then they'll give you feedback on like, okay, this is what you can do next time. And like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of like a numbers game. The more you do that, it's like, okay, well, this is what I can do next time. This is what I can do next time. You kind of mold it into the model that works. And I think that is the place you want to be, learning the model that works. And the model changes over time, I found. But if you can find the model that works for that time or for that genre or that television show or whatever, then you can just use that model and write songs. So Taxi is a great place to start. If you know nothing about sync licensing, jump on the Taxi podcast. I learned a lot from them. That's the owner who does this podcast each week. And then just get used to writing songs, pitching songs, learning to take rejection. I've heard from a lot of people that that's the hardest part, is like, oh gosh, my song wasn't picked. I mean, most likely, from my experience at least, majority of the time your song is not going to get picked. But there might be that time where your song does get picked. So that's a great starting point, is sign up for Taxi, look into Taxi, and just learn that way. Mm-hmm. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I've actually been a Taxi member since last year, and I agree that it's such a great way to get your foot in the door and just understand what the industry is looking for. I think it has just been such a light bulb moment for me to realize, okay, there's patterns. If you look at the listings of what they're looking for, a lot of times things will be the same. You know, they'll have a few references in that genre where you can listen and realize what kind of production that they want, or what's popular, what's trending right now, that they want you to do something similar, but not exactly. And also to not be specific. And it's more likely for your song to be used if you're not naming places and brands and being very detailed. Because like you said, when you're matching music up with video, like with a TV show or a commercial, the video tells the story. The music conveys the emotion and the feeling of that. For example, for commercials, they want you to give people a good feeling about buying their product. They want it to feel good and be like exciting. And so they don't want anything sad or depressing. They're like, no, keep it happy. That's awesome. That's what we want. And even giving it space and more instrumental or more building, where they have options to clip it down to 15 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute. They may not use the whole song. And so it's good to have those production points where it goes in and out, or it builds to where they have more to work with and it's more likely to be used. And so I was hearing from friends who were writing specifically for TV and for commercials, and they were talking about this. And so that's what got me curious. And I went and joined Taxi because they've already done so much research. They have a huge network of clients and people that are constantly looking for new music. So you have new listings come out every week of exactly what they're looking for. And it just makes all the guesswork go away. You don't have to like think about what you're going to write. You can just see that listing as a writing prompt and write something based on that. And so I do think there's like a disconnect with creative people and musicians thinking that might cramp their style. It's like, oh, well, I have to fit this mold. But like you said, it's a different mentality when you're like, okay, I'm doing this to sell this song. So I will give them exactly what they want for this, and then I can go write another song, or I can get paid for this to be used and then go write whatever other style or whatever expresses myself as an artist. Other than that, like, this doesn't have to be the end all be all in this one song. You can just go write another song. And so I think looking at it as a business and saying, okay, I'm going to sell this song based on what they're looking for. And the great thing is, the money of making money as the musician is in the ownership. So if you're the songwriter, you automatically own your publishing. So you have a writer royalty and a publishing royalty. If you're also the artist and you've paid for the recording or created the recording, You also get artist royalties when that's played on TV. You get recording copyright owner royalties. Those two are through Sound Exchange, the artist and recording owner royalties. And then the writer and publisher comes from your PRO. So whether that's ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, you're getting paid royalties ongoing. And that's past the sync fees that are upfront. And so this is just an incredible, lucrative way for musicians to have one song that can take off and be used multiple times. You could have hundreds of placements on one song, or 10 songs that get hundreds of placements, and you're not having to tour around the world, build up a ton of fan base, do radio tours, like all of that stuff that you kind of think of getting a record deal and trying to be famous and all of this stuff, getting on the radio. That is so much harder to do than someone that's being very intentional, specifically writing this song for this project, pitching it to that person that's looking for it, and they have a budget for it. So even if someone's just getting started and watching this, they could go to taxi.com/industry. And even if you're not a Taxi member, you can see what the industry is looking for right now. You can see what the listings are, watch for patterns, and you can see whatever genre you're working on. Like, what are they doing in country? What are they looking for in pop? What are they looking for specifically for commercials? And for me, I was like, why not go for the top? Like, why not go for commercials? Because they have like 5 and 6 figure payouts for one use, and you still own the song. It just blows my mind. There's just so much money in it for musicians. And I had no idea how it worked until recently, until I was talking with other friends doing this. And it's almost a no-brainer, And so I really like that we're talking through kind of the nitty-gritty of getting started, because I'm hoping that this will just catapult someone into going for it and trying it. And who knows, you could literally write one song and it's just what they're looking for. You can pitch it today. It could be chosen and they use it. It's like, if the song is good enough for what they want and it's a good fit, then they'll use it and it'll get the placement. So you have so much opportunity to get your music out there. And so, yeah, I'd like to hear from your perspective. We talked about, like, it takes a lot of pitches sometimes to get a placement to be exactly the right fit. Like, maybe it's just close, or it's like almost there, but not quite. So what has your experience been getting feedback from after you've pitched it and then you hear back from them? Specifically from Taxi, they do give you information. They give you feedback from industry professionals in that genre who know what they're talking about. And I love that they give you feedback every time, whether it gets forwarded or returned. They'll tell you why or why not. So what has your experience been with that?
My experience with that has been that my personal experience is, each time it comes back, I realize I have to disconnect more from the song, because I'm so used to writing from my specific personal experience. And every time it comes back, I realize, like, okay, this is too personal to my own experience. Like they want generic. Like, for example, one of the songs that kept coming up of like something that's a really good basis to go off of, is just to like go back to, is that song, I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. Like, if you listen to that night, or that song, there's no names, there's no places, it's just kind of words and good feeling. And I realized, like, every time I was getting something back, I was sending something that had a lot of personal emotion in it. And even though that's good for some things, like for sync licensing, you have to take yourself as much out of it as you can and make it as universal as you can. And to be honest with you, that was very hard for me. I felt like a lot of people probably feel, which is like, I'm selling out, or I'm just writing songs for the man or something like that. But that's what this kind of is. You're writing songs for a man or woman that needs a specific thing. It's that you have to change your mindset. And the years that I've been doing it, that's been the biggest transformation that I've had to learn, is that my mindset has to change. I can't look at this as if I'm going to write a hit song that's really, 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 really good to be on the radio, because in my experience, it's not about the song being really, really good. It's about the song fitting. And that's the be all end all right there. Does the song fit? It can be the stupidest song ever, but does it fit? and if it fits, then that's a win right there. It doesn't matter if the song is stupid or not, because the more you write songs, the better. Like if your passion truly is to go write just a really, really good song, writing for sync licensing, you're practicing writing songs. So you're getting better at songwriting. Think of it as an exercise, which is what I've had to learn to do. It's like, okay, if nothing else, if there's no placement, if there's no anything, this was an exercise, and I'm now better at songwriting to write the songs that are meaningful to me. So if you can change your mindset, or a lot of people, if you can go into not having to do that switch from your mindset, and a lot of pop songwriters are really good at that, like people that are just tuned into pop and they've been writing like that the whole time, then they're leaps and bounds ahead. But it's so crazy because it all comes down to what it is that you're writing for. Like, for example, the show The Walking Dead. When I watched that show, I thought those songs are so cool. I love those songs that they're using. They're gritty, they're westerny, they're this or that. Now that wouldn't work for like a McDonald's commercial.
Right.
So it all comes down like, what specific thing are you writing for? And that was another thing that I had to do. It's like, okay, what am I writing this for? And that's the benefit of Taxi. You don't have to think, oh, what am I going to write this song for? Taxi lays it all out for you. And you just have to know exactly what you're writing for. Mm-hmm. And you have to get over those hoops of, but this is a really good lyric. This means something to me. And it's like, well, no, don't think so much that. Make it universal. Make it fit exactly what it is that they're looking for. So my experience has been just expanding my mind as a songwriter and thinking there are different ways to write songs and it's okay.
Yeah, I think the mindset is huge of just being open. And even my co-writer says it this way. She says, I'm open-handed with this. Like if we need to tweak it for what the client wants, or if we need to tweak it for what the listing is asking for, we will give up some creativity to make it work for what they're looking for. And so there is a give and take. It's a kind of a collaboration of, what is it that the industry needs, and what is it that, could make the song the best that it can be, instead of us as the writers thinking, how can we make this creative? It's like, how can we make this more universal? And how can we make this the most general and focused on the feeling and the emotion of the song, conveying that emotion in the way that anybody that listens to it can understand. Right. So I think as creative people and songwriters, especially lyricists, like we've got a huge vocabulary usually, or we've got, puns, and we've got internal rhymes and double meanings and like all those things that we love to do. But it's like, you have to cut all of that out and really slim it down to what is the exact thing. Like your reference earlier to, I've got a feeling. It's like, that's very general, and it just describes feeling good, and that's it. And one thing that blew my mind was I was starting to do research on what songs are being used in commercials, like tech commercials, the Google Pixel phone or Dell laptops. Like, what are they using for that? And so I would go and watch those commercials. And it kind of made me laugh because like the song would say, I want it. I want it all. I want it all right now. And I'm like, that is so creative. It's just like, I could write that in my sleep. It's so simple. But it has to convey that emotion and really connect with the buyer. And the buyer's not really thinking about the lyrics. They're just, seeing the product and subconsciously apparently wanting to buy it and wanting it all. So I think it's just so fun to kind of think about it that way of like, how can we simplify this to where anybody that listens to this song, whether they're a musician or not, would just get it instantly and just have that feeling when they listen to the music. They don't know why, but you're the one like facilitating that. And so I think it's really cool to have that open-handedness and just say, what does this song need? And what does the client need? Because it's a very like servant attitude. You're like, how can I best serve this song and, really put it out there the best that it can. And then it's not about you, and it's not about, how great you can rhyme words. And it's not about how creative you can get with this song. Like I just wrote a song with my co-writer that we were going to pitch, and we had to tweak some things because the first version of that was too creative. It was too artistic. And so as we were reading through the lyrics, it's like almost a rewrite of saying, if someone heard this without the context. Would they understand it? Is there a way we can simplify this and just make it easier for anyone to understand? And so I think that's helpful on the mindset side of things, is just thinking through the listener and thinking through, what does the client want, the music supervisors, what are they looking for? What would make their job easier and want them to say yes to your song?
You hit a point there talking about what would make their job easier. Like, I've noticed that simplicity, if you can make, and this goes into another aspect of what I've learned, but like, if you can make a music supervisor's job as easy as possible, even if your song, and this is what I've heard straight from music supervisors.
I've heard it too.
Even if your song is not the best, but it's easier to clear, is what they call it, when it's like set to go, we're good. If it's easy to clear, then they will choose that song over something that could be better, that's all jumbled up and confusing. Yeah. And that was another huge thing that I had to really learn. It's like, okay, I have to make this as easy as possible for them. Like, because I don't want to have a song that would fit in, but then I don't have all my ducks in a row and they're thinking, I don't want to deal with that. Let's just go with the second best option. It's like, that sucks. So what and that was hard for, I guess, my brain to learn. It's like, okay, what do I need to do? Let me make sure I have everything in everything set up. And like, that comes down to like, as simple as like having your own publishing company. Like, even I found, like, so I submitted my music, like, and there's different routes too, which we can get into later, but I submitted my music to a company to pitch for me. And it was all good. They're like, okay, cool. And I'm like, oh, great. They're like, okay, so what's your publishing company? And I was like confused, because I was like, well, aren't you guys going to be my publishing company? And like, oh no, we're not a publisher. We're kind of like the middleman, the way they explained it to me. It's like, so you have to have a publisher. If you don't have a publisher, you submit a song to a music supervisor and there's no publisher, they can't use it. It can't be cleared, as they say. So just learning, like, another thing too, is if you get into this and you're serious, invest in, like, I think it was like $240. I'm with BMI, $240 to get to have my own publishing company. So Warrior Freedom Publishing is what my publishing company is. And you have to have that unless you're signed to a publishing company. But what I've also found is being signed to a publishing company nowadays, it's like getting what it was to get a record deal. It's not easy. Like, everybody wants to be signed to a publishing company, and they're very specific on who they bring in and who they put their time into. So making sure all your ducks are in a row before you submit, because the other thing that could hurt you too is if you submit to music supervisors and you don't have anything in a row, say they really like your song, they're going to be like, oh, they don't have anything in a row. So the next time, even if next time you do pitch to them and they say, hey, or you say, hey, I got everything set up, they're not going to even want to waste the time, because like, well, last time you didn't, how am I going to know you have it this time? And that's crazy. So, it's doing your research and making sure you have all the business side done too.
Yeah,
and
the
what
admin
I've learned,
is so important.
Oh yeah. And what I've learned from my experiences with the years and years of trying to juggle it all, I like it much better having somebody do it for me. So at this point in time, I'm doing very little pitching on my own, but I have a company that's pitching for me. And I prefer it that way because it's easier on my brain, I guess I could say. But some people, it's easy for them to attain this information, understand it, and then go at it, and they can pitch themselves. But there's a lot of, like you say, admin to it that I didn't know. I thought it was much simpler. That doesn't mean, like, once you learn it, you know it and it's all good. You just have to learn it first.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because most independent musicians have to wear all the hats and do all the things, and they may or may not know that it's important to be signed up as a writer and as a publisher with a PRO, because that performing rights organization is responsible for collecting your royalties and for you getting paid as the writer and as the publisher. And so when you create an original composition and you have written that song, you automatically own your publishing, but it has to be registered through a
Hmm.
performing rights organization so they know where to send the check. They need to know who
Yeah.
to pay. And so you have to be signed up as a writer and as a publisher. So two different registrations with your PRO. And then also you have to register your songs with them. So you can say, I wrote this song with these co-writers. This is who cut the song, or this is who used the song, if it was a work for hire or not. There are things that you can go ahead and put in before it's even used. And so they'll be able to track that. If you're releasing it as an artist, then you can put it there, and then you can also get royalties that way, even if it's not been used in a TV show or in a commercial yet. If you're releasing it as the artist, you can register it with them, and so it's all set up before it's even used, so that on the back end you will get those royalties when it's played on TV or when it's in a movie or in a commercial. And like you said, time is of the essence with music supervisors. They want it quickly, and they want to know that it's pre-cleared. That's the word for it, is pre-cleared. They know that everyone that's been a writer on that song has given permission for it to be licensed, that it is available to be licensed. And it saves them time, because if there's some kind of hiccup that takes extra time, they don't have time for you to go back in the studio and fix something in the production. They don't have time for you
Right.
to go and track down a co-writer and sign a mechanical license or something. They just go on to the next song. Even if your song was a good fit, if the admin side is a mess, then they won't use it, because it's just a headache for them. And so the best thing that you can do is have all your ducks in a row. And that's what it means, is to be signed up as a writer, as a publisher, have all the permissions that you need. So you can say, this song is ready to go. It's pre-cleared. Here's all the information. I had one song that was pitched to a Netflix theme song for a pilot TV show, and it's on hold right now. So we'll see if that comes together. That would be an amazing
Oh,
first placement.
wow. Oh,
But
yeah.
they followed up and said, can you send me a split sheet of all the co-writers, all of their publishing information, send everything you have about this song? And they had a whole list. And they were also like, send me your artist website and your artist bio and your artist photo. Well, me and my co-writer had just started a band to pitch these
Hmm.
songs. And so we're like, let's throw up a website real quick, and let's write a quick bio, and let's put a photo together. And it was like, we kind of scrambled that day to get it, because time is of the essence. So if
Yeah.
they needed it within 24 hours, we threw up a website and we wrote a bio and we did it. But you know what? Now that work is done and it's ready for the next time. And that's the furthest that we've gotten so far to getting a placement. And so it was like, okay, we're learning as we go, and it will be easier next time, because we have these things in place. And we were thinking, we've got time to build a website, we've got time to do something. But then when they asked for it, we're like, all right, we're under the wire now, it's time to do it. And so I've been pitching stuff for the last 8 months, and I really like the advice of just sticking with a genre or sticking with a certain style that you're just really good at. And so that can be your thing. And so what we narrowed it down to was indie pop, and pitching it specifically for commercials. And so for those, it kind of needs to be a certain duration, usually around 2 minutes or less. So it's not like a 3.5 minute song for radio. You got like a 2 minute song. And then, like we talked about, having those gaps and instrumentation where they can easily clip it down to different lengths. And
Hmm.
they might even use just the instrumental. So they might not even use the vocals. It might not even matter about the lyrics. They might use 30 seconds of your instrumental in the background of something. You still get paid for that. And so
Shoot.
it's just amazing to me how it works, because the more I learn about it, I'm like, really? This is how it works, and this is what you want, and this is how much people will pay for that. And
Hmm.
so I just get fired up talking about it, because I'm like, every musician needs to know this, because this could
Yeah.
be life-changing. This could be your full-time thing. And it can take a while, but it can happen quickly too. It just
Yeah.
really depends if your music is ready, if your admin stuff is set to go. And if you own all of it, that's pretty amazing royalties on the back end. If you're the writer, publisher, artist, recording owner, and you're pitching it yourself, you basically get the whole pie. And what you talked
Right.
about, having someone helping you pitch, can be really helpful to save you some time. And sometimes that is worth a percentage of it to have
Hmm.
somebody else pitch it. So that's an option. And also, if you're in a band or if you're in a co-writing situation, you might be able to write songs that are twice as good if you're writing with another person. So it's worth splitting it
Yeah.
50-50 because,
Yes.
100% of zero is nothing. So if you can
Yeah.
have
Do you want
50% of a
something or
lot, then
nothing?
that's great.
Yeah. And
So I think
that's
it's good
true.
not to be stingy and just to like know that there's enough for everyone. There is so much to go around. And I just want people to hear that, because a lot of times we have this scarcity idea of like, oh, well, somebody else is going to do better, or somebody else is, going to get this, or there's only so many opportunities. We kind of think about that with like the top 100 songs or the top 40 songs, or, the songs that actually get the cut on being on an artist record. But it's different than that. It's like there are thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities and new opportunities all the time for new, fresh ideas.
Mhm.
And even for independent musicians, indie artists, there are so many opportunities for minimal and sparse instrumentals, is what I keep seeing. And I'm like just cracking up at this, because I'm like, okay, I can do minimal. I can make it sparse, It's
Mhm.
actually just like kind of reversing the complexity of what musicians might think of, like, oh, I need to put every riff that I know in here, every chord, and I need to do all the fancy stuff. It's like, no, if it's just like a 4-chord progression and it has a nice flow, like, it might get used. And so sometimes
Especially in
slower is better.
yeah, especially in commercials too. It's like primitive is good.
Right.
One quick thing I want to touch on that we kind of touched on too is also too, it's like who's doing your production. That's a huge thing I found too, because you can write a song that is perfect. It's just not produced right.
Yeah.
And like another thing that I made a conscious choice of doing was like I've always produced my own music. I wanted to continue to produce my own music so I could do something quickly. Like I don't want to have to call somebody and say, hey, can you do this? Like, well, no, I can't do that now. It's like, oh, I missed an opportunity. So I wanted to learn how to produce my music in a way that fits. And that was a learning curve too. It's like, okay, well, my main thing too for pitching music is kind of like indie pop too. I guess that's what you would say it, popish indie type stuff. And I needed to learn how to produce like that, because the truth is that I've never produced like that. I produced like hard rock music. So that was a learning curve, but it's what I wanted to do. It would have been much easier to go to somebody who knew exactly how to do it. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep it in my own hands so I could do things quickly. So it comes down to like, you could have the songs like, this is perfect. Why is this not working? It's like, well, most likely the production. If everything is lined up and they say, hey, it's all good, this is good, it's most likely the production that is hindering it. So there's something else to keep in mind if you're starting out too.
Yeah, I think so. So if there's someone listening that's mostly a songwriter, writing the lyrics, creating the melody, teaming up with a really solid producer who knows the industry and knows what people are looking for is a game changer. And I know that it can get so expensive for musicians to go in and record a song for $1,000 and then be able to pitch it. And you have no guarantee that they're going to use that song. So it's like, how many songs can you do before you're like in the hole, and you just don't know which songs. It can get really expensive. And so one thing that I've really thought was good advice from several friends that are doing this is making a team, having a team of co-writers and production where you go in on the ownership. So when the song is used, everyone gets paid. And so you can go in, like right now on some songs that we're doing, we're going in 3 ways. So it's me and my co-writer and my producer. We go in, we split the ownership 3 ways, and each person has put in a lot into making that song what it is. And so it's very deserved. And we're all in agreement, like we're going to split it equal ways, 3 ways. And when that song gets used, we all get paid really well. And so there's some songs, like if I was going to release it as an artist, I would want to make sure that I pay that producer. Usually I pay a flat rate and just know like it's not by an hour. It's going to be like, okay, here's the flat rate per song. And then I own it because I paid for the recording. So there's a lot of value in that. And if I'm releasing it and I'm marketing it and selling it, that's great. But if you're just pitching a song and you don't know if it's going to get used, you don't know if you'll, release it as an artist, it's really good. It's more sustainable to go in it as a team effort. And also the producer has skin in the game. It's like they want it to be good and they want it to be used and get the brief or get the listing, and they want to be paid well for it too. And so if you're all going in on it and believing in the song, I think it's going to make it the best quality that it can be. And
Right.
also, if you're not the one doing the production, teaming up with somebody who does know and has really good production chops can be a game changer, whether that song is used or not.
Right.
So
Right.
that's really important. And like you mentioned, the turnaround is really important because a lot of times there's tight deadlines. And I just had this
Yep.
happen to me like a couple of weeks ago. There was a listing that came out on Taxi for an indie pop song to pitch to an artist that was cutting songs to record with like a record label. So they were looking for songs and they would be re-recording it. So really what they needed was a good quality demo. And the deadline was in 2 weeks. So I contacted my producer that I've been working with. I was like, is there any way we can do this in the next 2 weeks? And he was like, I'm swamped. I can't fit it in. It's not going to work out this time. And so then, my creative wheels are turning. I'm like, who else can I call? Like, is there anybody else that I know that could maybe do a quick deadline for a good quality demo? And so that's when networking comes in handy, or even reaching out to other musicians and saying, who do you work with? Or do you know somebody who's a really good pop producer, or whatever style you're doing? Like, who's really good at this, who might want to team up on this? And then keep it simple. Like for the demo, it didn't need to be fancy. It just needed to be good enough to present the song well. So I ended up co-producing with a friend remotely, and I sent my little vocal like voice memo demo of the song, and he tracked guitars and piano. He sent it back to me. I tracked vocals at my home and sent it back to him. He mixed it down, and we were able to submit it on the deadline date. So man, if that song gets used, I'm going to be so happy because we threw it together. We wrote the song based on the listing. We did the demo. And then, I went through several tries trying to find a producer who had time to make it happen. And that was such a good learning experience and lesson for me. Like, I'm learning to record my own vocals at home and make sure that it's good enough quality. And then being able to partner with somebody who's great at mixing is a game changer, because I'm not to that level. And I really want to focus on like the songwriting side. So teaming up with them was like perfect. And we got it in on time. So that would be amazing if the song gets used. But also,
I hope it does.
In the songwriting process, we were also thinking, if this artist doesn't use it, or if we can't get it done in time, let's make it general enough so we can pitch it to another pop artist when the next listing comes around, and just make it up to par with the references that they're giving, make it what they're looking for, that theme and that type of thing they're looking for. So then next week when a listing comes out, or next month when a listing comes out, that song is done, ready to go, and we'll just pitch it again and keep pitching it till it gets used.
Yeah, and you said it there, like these songs live forever. Like if it doesn't work for this, you can pitch this song for the rest of your life, and it could get picked up here, and then it could get picked up there, and it could get picked up by all these different places, all with one song that you put the time into. It's so amazing. And it really comes down to like, what I truly believe with this is, if you can persevere through it. And I think the key in this industry is persevering. If you stick with it, don't get discouraged, and just keep going. Eventually, I truly believe this, eventually something will happen.
Yes.
Something will happen. You will get some sort, like if you continue to learn, you will get some sort of placement. Like say you're like in my situation, it's like you're realizing, well, my production just isn't working. So you decide, okay, I'm going to get a producer. Maybe that will be the key. If you keep exploring and keep going, and that's the beauty of this specific industry. I truly believe if you get into it and you learn enough and you write enough, you will eventually get a placement. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just on the cusp of it. And so I'm like, I can talk about pitching the songs. I can talk about everything I've learned up to this point. And I feel like we're this close to having our first placement. And I really feel like it's just going to be a machine and a snowball effect, because like you said, once the songs are ready, once their production is up to par, then it's go time. It's like, just license it over and over and over, and it can get used in many, many different places. And one song can just take off, and you never know what song it's going to be. Like so many people have told me, so many writers have said, I didn't think that would be the song. I just threw it together, or we did a demo of it overnight for a tight deadline, and boom, they use it in a big feature film. Okay. It's like, you just never know what's going to get used. And so I think just being willing to throw your hat in the ring and say, here it goes. I'm going to give it my best shot with the time that I have and with the skills that I have and the resources that I have, whether it's reaching out to other musicians, asking questions, whether it's watching YouTube videos and learning to produce yourself, and to be able to, get to the point where you can do a good guitar and vocal demo or a good piano vocal demo, or even, you don't even have to do vocals and lyrics. You can do instrumental tracks and make your own unique tracks and pitch those. I did want to bring up seasonal songs, because think about this. You could make a Christmas album, for example, or Christmas songs that could be used in the background of Christmas movies. Think about Hallmark Christmas movies. Last year, I started pitching songs that I had recorded 7 years ago. I had been selling on CDs. I do a Christmas tour every year, and I just do like acoustic Christmas carols. And so they're like traditional carols, really pretty, like acoustic guitar and vocal, very simple. But I started pitching those. They actually did get forwarded to like a Hallmark Channel type thing. And so who knows, they might be used next year for Christmas stuff. But if you have something seasonal like that, think about that. It comes around every year. People are going to watch those Hallmark Christmas movies, and they have new ones coming out all the time. So they're looking for new music. Think about 30 seconds of that in the background of a scene being used. I mean, that could be amazing. And it could be used in lots of different movies. So even stuff like that, where it's not an original song, if it's your cover of the song or it's your version of it, you own the recording of that, you're the artist of it. And if it's public domain, then you don't have to pay royalties as far as doing the cover song. So that is a hot tip right there, because if it's public domain Christmas songs, like if it's old enough to be in the public domain, it is fair game. So you can do your version of it. And I think music supervisors love that as well. If it's public domain, then it's less of a hassle for them and for you. So that's something, if somebody just wanted to do their own version of instrumental, it could be guitar and piano, it could be simple, put your own Christmas music out there and pitch that to things too. So there's themes of music that you can do, or find some obscure genre where you can really shine because there's not much competition, and just kind of use what you're good at and be really the best at it. Like just be the best in that genre, and you're going to kind of rise to the top. So I think that would be a cool thing. If somebody takes that away from the conversation and gets a placement, let me know, because I think it's a great idea.
That's great advice. Like that's so perfect. Yeah. Go and do something that comes around each year. It goes back to that thing. Like these songs can live forever and be pitched for the rest of your life. So good point.
Yeah, think about those like dinky, clunky Christmas songs that come on the radio every year. The production is not that great. Like it was recorded 50 years ago, and it was just like silly stuff. They need good quality music, to kind of like replace that. There is room. There's so much room for good quality music, for good quality writing. But I just wanted to bring that up, because even for people that don't write original lyrics or who are not a singer, if they're a musician, they can be tracking instrumental stuff. Or even if you just want to produce, if you don't play an instrument, you can produce and do beats and loops and tracks, and even create your stuff and collaborate with somebody else who plays an instrument, or somebody else that writes lyrics or that's great at melodies. And it's like, the sky's the limit. There are so many possibilities. So what would you say to someone wanting to get started? I mean, we mentioned, going to Taxi and signing up with them. But what are some other ways that people can get started right away to get their ducks in a row, to actually put their music out there and to start pitching?
My biggest thing is find a mentor. So I was fortunate enough, I was super fortunate to find specific people that I didn't know before I started, but through podcasts, I'd reach out to these people like, oh my gosh, they had so much information. And I thought I'm going to reach out to them. And majority of the people wrote me back, whether they said, hey, here's a quick tip. Other people have said like, hey, call me. Spent a couple hours on the phone with me talking, and we're still friends to this day. And it's open. Like one guy, he had so much good information. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy has so much. I have to contact him and that was like a couple years ago. I've now produced songs for him. It opened up different doorways, songs that he's going to pitch. And if it comes back to like finding the team, like if those songs get placed, I get, I get my myself as the artist done. That's the agreement that we had. So finding a mentor, another mentor that I actually was in my area, who's like a taxi success story. Like he speaks at the yearly meeting in LA all the time. Yeah, it's a guy named Dean Crippane. He actually lives in my area, and we actually met, and he agreed to listen to my songs before I send them to supervisors and tell me what needs to be tweaked. So I have
wow.
It's like sending a song to a supervisor without getting that, oh gosh, this isn't good, I don't want to hear from them anymore. It's like, hey, change this. And he said, like, with some of the songs, which is so exciting, like, yeah, you could play this all day. And he's had like, I think like hundreds of placements. So finding a mentor is what I would say, outside of, learning. Find a mentor, somebody that can guide you through. And the truth is too, is like, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but in my experience, huge part of this, I would say even 50%, is who you know. Like if somebody knows a supervisor and they have an in, that supervisor's going to go to that person even before they get like blind pitches from people. Like they're going to say, hey, what you got? Hey, what you got? Hey, what you got, to these people that they know, because it's easier. So if you can meet supervisors, like, and that's one of the biggest things that I was like seriously considering when I started, is like, hey, let's move to LA for the sole reason, just so I can get to know these people face to face. My wife would never go for that. She wouldn't want to live in California, anywhere in California. So that was off the table. And we even considered Nashville, even though it's not as hot and heavy in like the placement, there still is some there. And we were considering that. That's a place that she would consider going. But yeah, so it's how can you get to know these people? How can you become a face that they recognize, or a name that they recognize some way? That's the other biggest advice too, is make yourself known.
I've heard that advice so many times, and I do feel like that can be discouraging because it does seem vague. It's still like, well, how? And so here's a few like very specific ways. You can look at TV shows on imdb.com,
Yep.
see who is the music supervisor for those songs. So if you're, like you mentioned, The Walking Dead, see who chooses the music for The Walking Dead. And if you have music in that style, connect with them on LinkedIn, send them your start posting, like add value to them, see what they're looking for, and then like start building relationships with people that way. There's also Facebook groups of music supervisors who will give feedback or who will post what they're looking for. So you could go just search music supervisor Facebook groups and start joining some of those. And another thing that you can do is to look into conferences where music supervisors will hold a panel, or they'll take submissions and give feedback, and you're meeting people face to face. You can, swap cards or whatever you do nowadays. Business cards used to be a thing. I used to pass out tons of business cards. And so now, like, more on the technical side, like, look them up on LinkedIn, follow people, see what they're looking for, look for patterns. How can you help them? How can you make their job easier? So I just wanted to kind of interject that and say, here's specifically how you can look up some of those things and connect with the people who are actually making the decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final thing that was really helpful is there's a site called Tunefindcom.
Yes.
And it has your TV show, and it shows all the songs played in an episode. So if you're thinking like, okay, well, I really love this TV show, what songs does that music site supervisor pick? And one cool thing is, like, there was a show to where I was like, oh, this would be a cool show to pitch to. And one of my friends that I went to music school with got her song placed. So I contacted her and said, like, I hadn't been in touch with her for a long time, said, hey, what cool, how'd you do this? And she's like, oh, I actually didn't do anything, my publishing company did it. So there's that whole thing too. It's like publishing companies have that connection. It's like, if they don't know you, they at least know your publishing company. So there's that in right there. So Tunefind.com is another great resource on, like, okay, what kind of songs do they pick? Does this specific supervisor pick?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Another way that people can get started with pitching their songs is to look up music libraries that take submissions for specific things, especially if you're into instrumentals. If you're open to exclusive deals, meaning you could sign it to that library, you get higher payouts, and you can just make more tracks and pitch them to other music libraries. So there's a lot that goes into that. And so you can look up music libraries and look at their criteria for joining as an artist or, as someone who is supplying the music. And then people can go and find the music based on the BPM. They can find it based on the instrumentation or based on the theme. So if they say, I want a happy piano, like mid to up tempo, with like, whatever they want, they can just filter it, and then your song could pop up and they can use it and you can get paid. So sometimes that's on a subscription basis where people pay for the access to that library. So you get paid for that. They keep track of everything. So that's another way, is just look up individual music libraries and start stacking that up. Make a spreadsheet of all the places you've submitted your music, where those songs live. So I think staying organized and just knowing which songs you've pitched, which songs have been placed or have been asked about, just kind of know the status of each one can really help, so you don't double book yourself and, sign songs to multiple libraries. That's a no-no sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to read the fine print, read exactly what they're looking for. But that's a way you could reach out to music libraries on your own if you've already got material that you can pitch. I've been writing songs for 15 years, and I realized that most of the songs that I have written and recorded were not syncable. They were not up to par with what they were looking for. And now I know what they're looking for. So now I'm creating towards that. And so
Right.
I did have the Christmas music, which I was able to pitch. And so I think that's going to do really well.
Mm-hmm.
But now moving forward, I'm creating music based on what they're looking for specifically, so it has the best chance that it can to be put out there. So I just want to encourage people, especially independent musicians, that it's possible, that there are lots of ways to do this. And these are very specific tips that we've shared to just get started, put your music out there, pitch it. You just never know what song is going to get. You never know when it's going to take off. And it doesn't have to take years. Sometimes it does take years to just, get to the point of putting yourself out there, but it doesn't have to. It can happen today. Like, you can move forward today and join one of these things that we've talked about. Join a PRO today, join Taxi, or, go to a conference like this. There are steps that you can take today and every day. Really, I try to take steps every day and do something towards my music, whether it's writing or recording or pitching, just putting something out there, because it's going to come back eventually.
Absolutely. Well said. And yeah, shoot, I wish I found something like this in the beginning. Like
we're creating what we wish we had.
Yeah, it's so important to hear from people. And so, yeah, been a huge honor talking with you about this.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience as well. Let me know, let everybody know that's watching, how to get connected with your music and to listen to what you're up to.
Sure. So you can go to joshnorth.com, reverbnation.com/joshnorth, soundcloud.com/joshnorthmusic, and joshnorth.bandcamp.com. Some of that is under construction right now, but if you want to hear a lot of songs that I have written for sync licensing, reverbnation.com/joshnorth is the best place to go right now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate your story and your encouragement too. I love putting good things out there and just letting people know it's possible. So thanks for joining me for that chat. I think it's been such a good conversation, really encouraging to me. And I know it's going to be encouraging for those listening and watching as well. So appreciate your time on that. I do want to invite people to join the email list over at rusticsongbird.com, because that's where I send out resources for independent musicians who are wanting to write, release, and record their own music. So go check that out at rusticsongbird.com. Josh, thank you so much for being here with me on the call today and for sharing from your experience. I wish you all the best and look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Lydia. See ya.